G'day everybody, welcome to another episode of Governor's Video Hero Reviews. This time around we are looking at the December 2021 Hero of the Month, who is titled Donny Duke, or D&D as I'm going to use for short throughout this video. So a special welcome to all of the viewers, especially the new ones, as well as my old and ongoing viewers. As always, please do swing the video a like if you find this content to be helpful and good and useful throughout the duration of the video, and definitely share it around with whomever you feel will benefit from this content as well. If you're feeling extra special, you can even hit the subscribe button in the bottom right corner of this video. It helps you grab notifications, but it also helps me out with the YouTube algorithms and getting my content promoted through to other players. So moving on from all that self-promotion stuff, we can, or we really should actually start diving into D&D. So Donny Duke, he is a 5-star Blue Sentry class hero with the title of the Dynamic Duo, with Duke being the doggo, I am guessing, and Donny being his handler. If we switch over and pull up their zoomed in image, so that's what you see by clicking the magnifying glass, we can see that it is very definitely going with that canine and canine handler trope that is very common in police TV shows. I'm not certain how many canine handlers really walk around carrying the doggo on their shoulder. I'm guessing most of them usually use their own feet, but it is a very cute position there. There's a couple more interesting details. So number one being the big old assault rifle that Donny's carrying. I don't think many canine handlers carry weaponry of that caliber along with them. Usually they're handling the dog, but that's alright, I guess. There's also the knee pads, which are very handy for crawling around after doggo. But most cute, I found, actually, was if you look carefully at his waist pouch there, there's a small packet which looks like it's got a little doggy bone on it. So I'm guessing that's the treat pouch. So interesting little detail in there. One final thing that's worth noting or mentioning is that Duke here, the dog, is one of the avatars that is awarded for reaching level 100 in the game. So if you've been around for a little while, you might have seen the player JC from Uprising rocking that avatar. So this is finally showing where that dog image came from. There is a cat option as well, which is Hertzfeld, one of his cat minions. But yeah, we finally get a preview at where the German Shepherd doggo avatar came from. So there you go. The last thing to do real quickly before diving into the special skill and the hero itself is to pull up and have a quick look at that animation for his special skill. So we'll just play that now. Alright, there we go. So, it's a pretty interesting one. I actually kind of like it a little bit. It uses the bone to cast, I guess, Duke over at the enemy. I'm not certain that's how canine handlers normally do it, by throwing the bone at their the bad guy, but, you know, whatever works, I guess. So yeah, we'll switch back over, have a start looking through this hero card. So if we have a look at it now, we can see that on the stats side of things, D&D has 701 attack, 675 defense, and 1,394 HP as the base stat. So overall, they're fairly balanced. There's a bit of a skewing towards the attack stat, but not very substantial. So in terms of rankings, that places him in the top 35% of attacking heroes, the top 45% of defense, and the top 55% of HP heroes. So yeah, nothing too outlandish there, but it is a slight skewing towards that attack stat, as I mentioned. By way of charge speed, we can see that D&D has been awarded a charge speed of 56, which is classed as average. It is in the 10 tiles to charge bracket of average rather than the 11 tiles. It's also very easy to start charge breaking D&D down towards 9 tiles. So there's heaps of scenarios you can do that. All you really need to do is give him +3 speed. I haven't actually written it down, but if you give him a couple speed points, you can break him over that average range. So you can do it using a 3-star speed gun, the blue one, which is a vanilla weapon, or you can do it using an unleveled copy of either the Ice Breath Saw or the Regalizer Magnum. So either of those, any of those options will break him down to 9 tiles. It's also interesting and important, I feel, to note that if you can equip a +9 speed gun, such as a max leveled Regalizer or Ice Breath, you can actually charge break D&D twice down to 8 tiles. So a double charge break is extremely powerful. It's basically taking a fifth of his charge time away. So you can do that also using the +8 speed gun with the 2% speed node. But yeah, it's fairly easy to do that if you've only got a 4-40 speed gun, one of the 5-stars, so it's not through final promotion, or you can just do it using a fully maxed out 5-star blue gun. So yeah, charge speed 56 is quite awesome because you can quite easily achieve not just a single charge break, but also a double charge break also. So moving on from the speed, I did mention earlier that he is a member of the Sentry class. So this class is the one which gives a chance to create a small quantity of armor whenever they're hit by damage. Overall, I think this is probably one of the worse or less powerful or less potent classes that you can get. Main reason is because it only procs once at the end of the turn in which damage was received. It won't proc for every single individual time that the hero gets struck by something. It only procs once for the entire turn, which kind of sucks because if you look at some of the other talents like Withstand or even Dodge from the weapons, they will proc every single time they possibly can. So yeah, in any turn, the maximum amount of armor that a Sentry class hero can gain is 30 armor, which is quite small when you consider the amount of HP that he's got at 1394. It would be better if it was able to proc 2 or 3 times per turn, but just once is not great. So if we look at some of the other Sentry class heroes, there's some really great options that you can get in Sentry class. So you've got really great ones like Rudolph and Talon and Shocker and such. I will elaborate more on this later, but I don't think D&D is overly worthy of being a emblem priority. I think even a lot of the 4-star heroes are more worthy, such as the likes of Sabotai. He's a very helpful hero as he offers healing in yellow. But yeah, in the Sentry class there are some great heroes, and I just don't think that D&D really cuts it as a embleming priority, unfortunately. Yeah, there are really a lot of great Sentry heroes. As I mentioned, those first 3 of Rudolph, Talon, and Shocker, but you've also got ones like Crockett, who is a great supporting hero. Even Lillian does a lot of damage, but yeah, I'm kind of stealing my thunder from later on when I really start reviewing D&D, but not a huge priority for emblems. If we were to start looking at an emblem path, there are 2 very distinct ways that you could go, and they both have great rationale for doing it. You can either prioritize the attack stat in order to increase his damage as a sniping hero, or alternatively, you can prioritize the HP and defense stat in order to both beef up the Hound minions that he produces, as well as to help protect them. So for me personally, knowing the rest of the content of this review, which you will find out shortly as well, I will be recommending going the HP priority, so going HP, then defense, and then finally attack stats. There's 2 real reasons for this. So the first is that his attacking damage isn't actually very big. We're going to cover that a lot more detail later on, but it's not really great to start with, so you're not actually going to gain much by emphasizing it anymore. The other thing is that there is an entire line of his special skill which relies on having the Hound minion alive. So the more we can do in order to help that minion survive, the more it's going to help with having his special skill execute to its fullest potential. So if we follow that path of the HP stat, we come up with this interesting little path here. So it's got right node, go left, swing right for a defense stat, back to the left, back right, and then finally grab left for the speed node at the end. And if you're really keen, you can grab that +20 node as well. So if we were following this path, we do pick up a total of 3 attack nodes, so not very many at all. but we do get 6 defense and 5 HP nodes, as well as grabbing the plus 19 2% speed node. So if we calculated all of that out, it gives 51 bonus attack, 102 bonus defense, and 185 bonus HP, to give final total plus 20 stats of 752 attack, 777 defense, and 1,579 HP. So that is quite an increase in the HP of the minion on its own, given that the minion is worth 30% HP. So we basically picked up an extra 200, 220 to 60, about 60 extra HP just for free by following that path. So with all of the basics of the hero card done, we'll crack into some of what D&D actually does when we use him. So the special skill is titled Donny Duke, which at charge speed of 56 will deal 295% damage to the target. It will steal any dispellable buffs from the target as long as there is a Hound minion present, and then it will also then summon a Hound minion for the caster, who has 30% HP and 30% attack inherited from the caster. So there's a couple interesting aspects to this skill. So first of all, there's obviously the damage, then there's also the minion summoning side of things, and then there's also it's kind of like just a bonus effect, which is really contingent on the minion being present, but it's not going to execute every time that you cast his skill. So that's why it's kind of like a bonus effect rather than actually being a big part of his special skill. So breaking that down, we can start taking this special skill apart. So we'll start off by looking at his attacking damage, seeing as that's the first element. As I always do with attacking heroes, I'm just going to quickly, or I have already quickly calculated out the attacking power of Donny Duke and compared it to a whole bunch of other blue 5-star snipers that are available in the game. So as you can see on this list, D&D comes in at 2,067 attacking power. That's primarily as a result of his low end damage for a sniper. 295% isn't actually a very big number for a sniping hero. It is bigger than some heroes, don't get me wrong, but it's not massive for a sniper. So you can see there, he's all the way down there in the 13th rank out of the 16 sniping scenarios that I've come up with for blue. So if we have a look at that list, there are some standout hitters, such as Visor when he's hitting someone less than 50%, or Quilla is actually a quite interesting one when she's cleansing multiple ailments from her allies. You can see there for 5 ailments, she's doing 3197 attacking power, and if there happen to be 10 ailments that get cleansed, it's pretty much kicking out 4k attacking power to the one target, which is pretty huge. There are 2 things that are really worth noting on this list. So first of all, there are a couple of heroes on that list who have multiple damage scenarios, depending on who they target or the scenario of their targeting. So if we took all of those advanced scenarios out of it and just compared D&D to the base damage of all those blue hitters, it reduces it down to just 10 blue snipers, of which D&D ranks in at 7th. So not really a big improvement. There's still 3 heroes worse off than him, but yeah, slight improvement really. The second thing to note is that the middle section of that field is actually quite bunched up. So between D&D and the 8th position of Quilla, there's not actually much of a difference. I think it's only like 200 or 300 points worth of damage output difference between the two. So it's not actually a very big differential between that middle section of the field. If we do go on to normalize that attacking power against the number of tiles required to charge them, so basically taking into account their speed stat, it does revise the list a little bit, so a couple of the top end heroes sort of shift up and down a little bit. D&D does move up a couple spots, so he moves up from 13th into 12th spot, so a whole 1 position higher up. It's not a big change, but you do see ones like Quilla, who drops down a little bit, just because of her comparably slow speed, requiring 12 tiles to charge. Visor kind of hangs in there because he is kicking out at 9 tiles, so he is still quite effective, even at that speed normalized. In fact, he's very effective, coming in at the top rank. Lillian is actually probably the biggest mover when you normalize it by speed, because she is charging in 8 tiles and she already had quite a high attacking output. So she's one to watch out for. So if we move on from the damage, because that's pretty much all there is to say about it, and we start having a look at the other elements of his skill, I'm going to skip over the middle bit for now, and we're going to jump down to the last line, which is the minion generation bit. So that's the part where D&D creates a Hound minion for himself, which has 30% HP and 30% attack, which is based on D&D's stats at the time. So off the bat, we can see based on just those percentages, this is a really, really strong minion. It has the highest base stats of any minion in the game to date. If we take a look at all of those minion makers, I'll just show this little graphic here. So this is all of the 5-star minion makers that are in the game. We can see there that D&D comes in number 1 position, both in terms of the minion HP and the minion attack stat. The previous best hero that made minions was Wheels, who was doing 25% of HP and 8% attack. Then Nima, who was making 21% HP. So D&D is a step up beyond them, not only because of the HP being higher, but unlike any of the other ones, he has both a high HP and a high minion attack stat. Whereas most of the other ones are only doing one or the other considerably. The catch, obviously, is that D&D is only making a single minion for himself, like Wheels, whereas some of these other ones, like Nima and Talon, they're making one minion for every hero in the game. So, just one other real quick thing to note with that minion stat. The average 3-star hero in the game has 800 HP and 380 attack stat. So, one of D&D's minions is effectively equal to putting in a max level, or half of a max level 3-star hero. So if you can fire D&D twice, you've essentially brought a 6th hero along to the battle, which is kind of cool. It is only a single minion, and it is limited only to him. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to note. Languishing down the bottom of that list, there is the 3 water fight heroes from Summer. It's not really a surprise that they're so far down. If you've watched my video, my review video of the Summer event heroes, I was pretty scathing of those minions. The last thing actually to mention, sorry, before I move on from the minions, D&D's minion actually doesn't do anything specifically, unlike some of these other minions that get created. Like you've got ones like Wheels, minion who steals 30% of the enemy's healing. You've got Nemo, who does healing every turn, Booster, who does charge every turn, Talon with poison damage. Even the 3 water event summer heroes, they've got a attack debuff that happens. So D&D, he only creates the minion. The minion doesn't actually have any effect. So yeah, it is quite interesting. It's great, but it's also limited because it's only for him. So speaking of that minion then, we will segue, or rather shift into that final element of D&D's special skill, which is that he will steal dispellable buffs from the target if there is a Hound minion present. There's not a huge amount to say about this aspect of the special skill. It's essentially saying if D&D has one or more of his Hound minions present on his card at the time of casting, he will take any buffs that the targeted hero has and give them to himself. There is obviously that massive caveat of needing a Hound minion present before casting the special skill. What it basically means is that it will never, ever, ever trigger on the first cast. It can only potentially trigger on second, third, or and so on casts of the special skill. But again, it could very well not happen if the Hound minion's been killed off by then. So obviously, in order to make full use of the hero card, you're going to want to try and keep that Hound minion alive as much as you possibly can. And there's a couple really easy strategies I've sort of come up with that can help you do that. So the first one is emblems. As I mentioned before, if you follow that HP and defense path, it does mean that the Hound minion is going to have more base HP, but also the damage calculation is going to have less damage attributed against them, which will both help improve that minion's life cycle. This also really can be extended to anything which improves D&D's base HP and defense stats, such as HP weapons and defense buffs and that kind of thing. They'll all help keep that minion alive. Another strategy is to use D&D with a taunting hero. Basically, what this does is it will protect D&D and hence the minion from any direct damage that comes from special skills. Although at 400 HP, the minion is probably going to be able to survive most AoE 5 or AoE 3 hero damage. A sniper will definitely kill off the Hound minion, but yeah, anything less than a sniping shot and some of the bigger AoE 3 heroes, the minion will probably survive a direct hit, but then it could not survive some slash attacks. So taunting can be good to protect it from special skill damage. Another way you can do it is to pair D&D up with another minion maker. So what you can basically do with that is you can put out a meat shield in front of the Hound minion, which will preferentially take damage. So an example of this would be probably to use Nima alongside D&D, because Nima's minions already have quite beefy stats coming in at the 288 HP. So, you know, that's 288 damage that has to be killed off before you end up chipping off some of that Hound minion. Talon is also another good one because she does give that dodge buff, which will help you miss any of the damage. There is a fourth strategy. I don't really recommend it, but that's basically to use damage sharing heroes, such as Wilma or Tannenbaum. I don't really recommend this because it is a double-edged sword. Yes, you will share out damage that was intended to go against D&D. However, it also does mean that you're going to take damage, or D&D will take damage on behalf of his allies that he normally wouldn't take. So overall, this line of the special skill with stealing dispellable buffs, it's quite annoying how that it's been set up, and it's very underpowered. You just need to have a look at Krampus, the hero from the Christmas event, who will steal not only all dispellable buffs from all the enemies, but it also give all of the enemies any dispellable ailments on your teams. So comparably, D&D's effect here, it's very disappointing, really. Alright, moving on from D&D, looking at him exclusively, we're into the bit of the video where I start comparing D&D to some of the other heroes available. And this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, because most other heroes, there's kind of someone that's fairly similar to them, like there's like a sniper and a sniper you can compare them to. But D&D's a little bit different because there's not really any hero that kind of really correlates to all aspects of his special skill. There's ones that have kind of got one part but not others, so it's quite a unique combination of effects that's appearing here on D&D, but I'll do my best. The three heroes I've chosen to compare D&D to are, we've got Finlay, the summer event hero, the blue 5-star there, Pantera from Grand Heist, and then also Maverick, who is a vanilla hero. So starting off with Finlay, because I think Finlay's probably the closest match. So Finlay is a 5-star blue sharpshooter from the summer event, summer seasonal event. The base stats are pretty comparable. I don't actually have a normal card for him. I'm still looking for one. So if you've got a 5-100 card of Finlay, please do shoot it to me. I am still looking for it. But anyway, the stats are a little bit more skewed towards attack than Donny and Duke's is. And there is a loss of the HP as well on that regard. But yeah, in terms of the special skills, we do see that they are fairly comparable. You've got 295% on Finlay and also the same on D&D. But because of that higher attack stat that Finlay's got, the base attacking power that we saw from before is actually higher for Finlay. So it's 2197 versus 2067 for D&D. That will also increase up to 2644 if Finlay is targeting an enemy with a status ailment. There is that extra line below where it says it deals 60% additional damage if the target has a status ailment. If we flip over to the minion side of things, though, we see that D&D's minions are quite a bit stronger. We saw that before. Finlay does create 3 minions, one for himself and his 2 nearby allies, so it's kind of a case of D&D making a very powerful minion for himself, while Finlay creates 3 fairly weak minions for himself and his nearby allies, 1 each. So there is also that final line of D&D that is the buff stealing, but Finlay doesn't have anything in that regard. So overall, though, if I was to choose between these two heroes, I would go with Finlay on the basis that he is going to be kicking out a lot more damage than Donny and Duke will. Also, even more so because that status ailment side of things is actually quite easy to manipulate. Realistically, you can do it using Finlay's minions themselves because they create that negative attack ailment on enemies. So, ultimately, that limited impact or limited application of D&D's buff stealing is really not enough to sway me away from the extra damage you're getting from Finlay. If we flip over and have a look at Pantera next, so Pantera is a 5-star assault class hero from the Grand Heist Challenge event. So again, we see that the base stats are fairly comparable in terms of their net amount, But the big difference between the two is that Pantera has a huge skewing towards his attack stat. Like, it's absolutely gigantic. And because of that massive skewing, we can see that even though their percent damages are fairly comparable, 290% versus D&D's 295, Pantera actually comes out with quite a bit more attacking power. So from before we saw it was 2259 versus 2067 on Donny and Duke. If Pantera is hitting someone with armor, it will jack a long way up to 2804. So it is quite a lot more damage out of Pantera. So in terms of the rest of the special skills, Pantera doesn't create any minions, so there is a bit of a win there for D&D. But in terms of the buff side of things, Pantera has that bottom line which says it will remove buffs from all enemies. So basically it's a full team dispel. While D&D will only sometimes possibly take the buffs from one enemy, not all of them. There is that final element of Pantera, which is that the target receives plus 30% damage for 3 turns when hit by a stronger element. This is effectively a elemental debuff. It essentially means if you fired it and then threw blue tiles at a red hero that was affected by this ailment, they do 30% more damage. So it is an incredibly powerful effect against war machines and also quite powerful in raiding. So again, because of that increased damage and that full team dispel, as well as that additional damage ailment, I am recommending Pantera over Donny and Duke in terms of a leveling priority. The final hero we've got is Maverick. This is probably the least similar hero that I'm going to compare, but I chose him because he's a fairly common hero, being a vanilla hero, and is available to most players in the game. So Maverick is a 5-star assault class hero, same as Pantera. As a vanilla hero though, his base stats are quite a bit lower. You can see that his his power cost is 23 points lower, so on average they are lower base stats. There is that very similar skewing though towards the attack side of things that D&D has, but they are kind of like 20 points lower or 40 points lower on average than what we're seeing on D&D. In terms of the special skills, Maverick does have more base damage output than D&D at 2191 versus D&D's 2067. Maverick, however, does have a 45% chance for an extra attack to a new target. So basically it's a 45% chance to do another 295% damage to another enemy, which is really quite powerful. So if we factor that in, on average it raises Maverick's attacking power to 3176 versus D&D's 2067. Maverick will then give himself a fairly substantial charge increase, so he'll gain charge every turn, which allows him to charge and fire more quickly, more repeatedly. Comparing that charge generation buff to D&D's minion and buff stealing, it's a fairly tough call. I think between the two, they're probably the most even in terms of which hero to level up, but I will probably swing the way of Maverick. Just because of that additional damage output that he's giving, and the fact that you can keep his charge speed and his charge skill rolling over and over and over. I just don't like conditional effects like this buff stealing on D&D, where it is entirely reliant on a previous thing in order to do a major part of his special skill. So, yeah, unfortunately, D&D doesn't win against any of those 3 heroes that I've compared him to there. The final element of the D&D review is to take all that information that we've got and sort of thought about throughout this video, and we're going to start applying it to the different aspects of the gameplay. So if we look at those different elements of the gameplay, we've got, breaking it down, I guess we've got defense at the start there. So I don't really see D&D being a very good defensive hero. His damage, it's very low end for a sniping hero. Typically, if you're wanting sniping heroes on your defense, they need to absolutely smash a hero and maim them terribly. But D&D's just not doing that. So from a damage perspective, it's not great. He does give himself effectively a 30% heal via his minion. But there are a lot more and more minion destroyers that are coming into the game, which can chomp through that Hound minion instantly. So a great example is Weisheng. Weisheng will just destroy minions without even worrying about the damage side of things. So there is potential to use Donny and Duke as a wing hero, a blue wing hero, but really there are a lot more blue heroes that are far better suited to a defense team in either tank, flank, or wing, any of them, and they're going to produce more damage or have a bigger impact. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't see D&D making much of an impact on the defense side of things. In raiding and war attacks, possibly the most useful aspect of D&D because you can control it a lot better in terms of getting that buff stealing. Unfortunately, though, I think most other blue 5-star heroes and even most of the blue 4-star heroes are going to make more of an impact in the raiding side of things. As a hitter, there's just so much left to be desired. He's not kicking out nearly enough damage. As a minion / healer person, it's really only affecting him. You're not getting any benefit to the rest of your team. And that charge buff, that buff stealing that he's got, it's so situational. Like it needs to be in exactly the right conditions. You need to have a minion. So the entire first time you charge Donny and Duke in attack is basically wasted. You're not getting any real benefit out of it. The second time, you're possibly going to be able to steal buffs, but it's only from one enemy, so you're leaving most of the enemies still open to damage and stuff. So, yeah, I think if you're wanting a damage dealer, just take either a bigger sniper or an AoE 3 hero. You're going to get more damage out of them. If you're wanting a healer, take an actual healer along, like Anna is an amazing healer. If you want a dispeller, take Rex, who can dispel multiple enemies rather than just the one. It really is just too big a time frame needed to charge him, fire, and charge him again, and fire again in order to steal the buffs. There is probably one very, very specific application where Donny and Duke is probably better in attack, and that is specifically going after a taunt hero. The reason I say Donny and Duke is better, because if you've got that Hound minion already up, it doesn't matter that his buff stealing is only affecting one enemy, because with taunt active on the other team, you're only able to steal the taunt, like you're only able to dispel the taunt. All of the other allies are protected anyway. So in that instance, if you're going up against, say, Pantera or Groll or even Quake, you can use D&D to steal that taunt, lift it off the enemy, apply it to himself, and then play whack-a-mole with the rest of your heroes. So I will say that is probably the only real great, fantastic application for Donny and Duke. Outside of that one very specific application, I think just about any other hero is going to serve you better in attack on the 4 or 5-star side of things. Against war machines, D&D's skill set really doesn't add anything. His attack stats also not giant enough to warrant being brought along purely for that. And then on top of that, his minion will just slow the war machine fight down because it is taking away from your time to be able to manipulate tiles. So not a huge amount more to say on that front, just not really giving you anything on war machines. In events, like with pretty much every other sniper hero of the month I've reviewed, snipers aren't good for competing in events. You're really wanting multi-hitters and AoE heroes, because that's where you're going to get lots of damage output for a single charge. You're not getting that from Donny and Duke. In terms of completion of those events, again, he's not really contributing anything. You can sub in pretty much any other hero and you're going to get as good, if not better, results, such as like Maverick. Maverick, you're going to get more damage and you're going to possibly kill a second enemy as well. So, yeah, not a great hero for events either. In general gameplay, the PvE stuff, there's not really many opportunities for you to steal buffs. Not many enemy mobs and bosses and stuff actually create buffs for themselves, so that application is very limited in PvE. The damage side of things, again, it doesn't make him desirable, and his minions really only helpful in making him specifically survive longer. But if you're wanting to survive, or the team to survive, you're better off bringing someone that creates healing or armor for their entire team rather than just for themselves. On the tournament side of things, charged attack, he's coming from a base speed of 56 going up to 65, so there is a small improvement to be made there, but realistically it's not a giant improvement because most of the other blue sniping heroes are of comparable special skill speeds anyway, so he's not getting a real edge over any of the other 5-star snipers or anything else. So yeah, and in this situation the buff stealing is better because there are, as I said before, stealing buffs in attack is better and more controllable than in defense, and the minion is still going to be fairly limited because it is affecting only him, but he does pick up a little bit over normal rating in charged attack. In Bloody Battle, the minion is probably what saves him in Bloody Battle spheres, because there's no healing or armor allowed. minions basically fill the only role of pseudo healing in bloody battles. It is quite dented though, because he is creating only a minion for himself, whereas most other minion makers will make them for either nearby allies as well, or the entire team. So yeah, D&D has the beefiest minion, so it gives him a leg up, but it also tears him down a bit because he's only making that minion from himself. None of the other elements of his special skill change at all in bloody battle, attack, or defense. In buff booster tournaments, there is probably a small improvement again over normal rating, purely because there is that potential to steal buffs. So in buff booster tournaments, most players will create defense teams that maximize their buff generation, because that will maximize the attack bonus that they're getting, and hence kill the enemy faster. But yeah, unfortunately, unlike Krampus, Donny Duke requires that minion to be present for the buff stealing, and again, it's only ever going to be on one enemy, versus Krampus, who does it on all enemies. So yeah, it's still very limited in even that sphere. So yeah, if we grab that information that we've just said, looking at Donny and Duke in those different aspects of gameplay, and we take those thoughts I had and we turn them into grades. So we put it on an A to F grading scale, with C being average. I come up with the following rough approximate grades for each of those categories. So I award Donny and Duke, or I hereby award Donny and Duke, the following grades. So we come up with a C- in attack, a little below average. War Machines, I've given him a D+ because he doesn't contribute anything really there. Events, down to a D because, yeah, he doesn't do anything. PvE, I brought him back up to a C because he's not bad, but he's not fantastic either. In the tournament attack side of things, as I said, Bloody Battle, he gets a little bit of a leg up over normal rating, so it's gone up to a C. Same thing with Buff Booster. He has gone up a little bit because of that buff stealing. On Charged Attack, though, I've left him the same as War and Raid Attack because every other hero is also gaining as much, if not more, of a speed boost than he is. On the defense side of things, he's got a C- for general defense, C for Bloody Battle, C- for buff booster defense, and then a D+ for charged attack. I really don't see him as being a defensive hero at all. He's just too limited. So overall, that comes in with the total grading scheme of getting a C- in attack and a... It's coming in as a C- because this is calculated through my stuff. So it's coming in as a C- for defense, but it's borderline D+ / C-. So it's on the lower end of that C- area. So as always with these are just my personal thoughts and my opinion. It does all change very much based on the available roster you have and your own play style. What works for you definitely doesn't necessarily work for me. So yeah. That's really about it for Donny and Duke in terms of a review side of things. Overall, I think he's a bit of an undercooked hero. The damage is just a little bit too low, and the buff stealing mechanism is just extremely limited. The minion is great, but again, it's limited because it's only ever applying to himself. It's not applying to the rest of the team. I think if they had have kept the damage the same, kept the minion stats the same, and then extended it to all stealing the buffs from all enemies, I think he'd probably be a much more usable hero, and probably even remove that caveat of needing the minion. I think would have made him much better. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on Donny and Duke. Hit the comment section of this video if you agree with my assessment or if you disagree. If there's any applications or synergies with other heroes I've missed or overlooked, or anything else you'd love to tell me about this hero. I do love to hear from you guys. Because it does broaden my own, not horizons, but it allows me to see different scenarios which I may have overlooked. Because I'm coming at all of this from my own perspective, and everyone has their own different perspective on these heroes. So, again, if you've not done so but have liked and or found this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe buttons also. And so, with the completion of Donny and Duke's review, it does bring us to the second half of this video, which is reviewing the December 2021 weapon of the month, which is the Mjolnir MK24. I have probably massacred that pronunciation. I am very aware that it's not an easy English word. It's not an English word at all, but that's right. It's kind of, I think it's Norse heritage. But anyway. The Mjolnir is a 5-star yellow weapon, which gives a base improvement to stats of 245 attack and 213 defense. So this, I'm pretty sure, is the heaviest skewing of weapon stats that we've seen to date. Normally with 5-star weapons, the difference is only between 8 and 15 points between the attack and the defense stats. However, here we've got a 32-point skewing towards the attack stat. So it's almost unprecedented, I think, on the weapon side of things. And it does make a lot of sense when we carry on and have a look through the 2 perks that the Mjolnir offers to its owner. So the 2 perks that we get a plus 23% improvement to the critical chance, and we get a plus 19% improvement to the critical damage. Now, on the surface, those 2 perks sound extremely similar, and even if you've been playing this game for quite a while, you can find the distinction between the 2 perks actually a little bit confusing. So, by way of explanation, crit chance influences how often normal damage will successfully proc and be considered a critical hit. The crit damage perk influences how large the multiplier is in the damage calculation, thus changing the magnitude of the critical damage. So, put really simply, crit chance is how often, crit damage is how big. That's pretty much what it is. So if you're interested in learning a lot more about how the critical effect procs, how it's calculated and all that kind of thing, I've added a link in this video's description to a guide to understanding. It's basically like an essay that I wrote up on the topic of crit damage for Empires and Puzzles. So it is for Empires and Puzzles, I know, but SGG did take the mechanism and the mechanic and basically grabbed it, copied the code, and pasted it straight into Puzzle Combat. It applies exactly the same. So everything that I wrote in that article also applies to Puzzle Combat as well. So check that out if you are interested in learning a little bit more about some of the mechanics of the game. Back to the Mjolnir. If you have been playing for PC for a while, you'll remember, hopefully, an old weapon of the month, which was this same combination of perks. It was the Neopunk Talon. The Neopunk offered a 20% increase in crit chance and a 25% improvement to crit damage. Comparatively, the Mjolnir has an increased crit chance of 23%, but it is reduced comparatively on the crit damage down to 19%. So overall, it's a 2% net reduction in the perks compared to the Neopunk. If we compare those perks to some other weapons, the crit chance is quite widely offered. The average perk increase for crit chance is 25%, so the Mjolnir is a little bit below average. On the crit damage side of things, there is only the one other weapon offering that perk, which is the Neopunk Talon, and as I said, it's down from 25% down to 19%, so it is the lower of the 2 weapons. Overall, though, in spite of all of that, looking at this weapon of the month in terms of the available 5-star weapons, I would actually probably rank the Mjolnir as probably the 3rd best gun available for yellow. The best weapon, I believe, in yellow is the Maverick MK24, which is the crit/accuracy master weapon quest gun. That is then followed by the Ragnarok Vantage, which offers dodge and speed perks. But after those 2 headline guns, I think the Mjolnir is actually the next best option that you can give, because it does offer quite a substantial improvement in the normal damage output by way of the tiles improving. Not only because the tiles will crit more often and their crit will be bigger, but also because of that skewing on the attack stat. So I do think the Mjolnir is a very attack-oriented gun, and if you did get it, congratulations. It is well worth keeping. It's probably the first time I've said this about a weapon of the month in a long while, but it is well worth keeping and leveling probably 2 or 3 copies even, provided you don't have copious amounts of the Maverick MK24, that is, because that is a better gun. So yeah, that is good news for the Mjolnir and Mjolnir owners. So yeah, that's a win. And with that, it pretty well concludes the contents for this video. As always, I am keen to hear your thoughts on both the Hero of the Month and the Weapon of the Month, so do jump down in the comments. Leave me a little note there on your thoughts, if you agree or disagree or whatever, if you like or dislike the content, if there's something you think would be worth including in these videos, I am open to those suggestions as well. Or you can just jump in on the discussions over in Discord. I run a fairly active Discord server on Puzzle Combat, and there's a link in the description of this video to that as well. Again, if you found this video to be useful and / or helpful, do swing it a like, share it around, show your friends, do whatever. And if you're feeling extra special, you can even whack a subscribe to the channel as well. But that's really all I got for now. I will catch you guys all in the next video. But until then, stay safe and happy gaming. Bye.